What's going on, y'all? On today's episode of the Mission Ready Men podcast, we're going to talk about the lack of respect for life and reverence for life that is pervasive not just in this country, but around the world. And we're also going to talk about Hunter Biden and the guilty verdict in his federal gun trial. And we're going to talk about the implications that that verdict has for us and the Second Amendment. And then we just celebrated Father's Day. So we'll discuss fathers, and we're going to talk about that in the context of the crisis of manhood and masculinity that we're seeing in this country, or more specifically, should I say, the lack of manhood and masculinity. So let's get after it. Before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the videos. The more you share, the more people see it, the less beholden we are to the overlords who wrote the algorithm that is actively trying to suppress us, especially now in election season where they don't want any conservative content, regardless of how big or small the personalities are. They don't want any of that getting out. So please, like and subscribe and share. And you can also follow us on socials at Mission Ready Men on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And yes, they are suppressing us there too. And if you want the audio, head over to Spotify or Spreaker, and you can subscribe there to the audio podcast. And if you like the shirt I'm wearing, it is a new release. How can I offend you today? Go ahead and head over to 7armors.com. That's the number 7armors.com and pick one up, because this does offend. This does offend a lot of people, and I'm okay with it. But anyway, now that we have the business taken care of, let's hit it.
Hit it, sweetheart.
There is a very disturbing trend all around the world right now toward euthanasia. Canada has what's called the Medical Assistance in Dying Program, MAID. The Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and a few other countries over in Europe all have laws legalizing euthanasia and assisted suicide. And the laws governing the euthanasia and assisted suicide in all of these countries, they say that the person must be in unbearable physical or psychological pain. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Suffer from an incurable condition with no chance of recovery, be of sound mind, and have exhausted all reasonable treatments and whatnot. Canada right now technically does not allow people suffering from psychological issues to make use of the MAID program. I suspect that there have been some exceptions, and I suspect that there will be a lot more going forward, because in 2027, it is set to allow people with psychological issues to participate in the MAID program. So much to talk about, and it's not funny, but it's just amazing to me that we've fallen this far. But the first thing we need to understand is that this is what happens when you abandon God. When the state, when the medical profession, when anything else becomes your God, and God is not the center of your life, you don't have any respect for life. And that's why killing babies is such a big business. And if we allow this to happen, allow this to continue, killing the elderly, killing the mentally ill, killing the infirm would be just as big a business. And People, they're suffering. People are suffering because they don't have any hope. And when you don't have any hope, dying, just quitting seems like the next logical step. But what we should be doing for these people, and what is not only are we not doing it, in a lot of places it's not even allowed, or at the very least, very frowned upon, is praying for these people. I mean, they need help. They need all the help that they can get, and praying for them is the best thing that those of us who don't have any medical training can do. We need to let these people know that God loves them, God can heal them, God can ease their pain. Killing someone, whether it's a baby in the womb, a mentally ill teenager, uh, a soldier, a veteran who is suffering from any of the things that soldiers, especially combat veterans, deal with when they come back. An elderly grandmother who's suffering from a debilitating illness. These people need our help and need our prayers, and killing them is the exact opposite of that. In the Netherlands, a doctor told a family to hold down an elderly woman while she administered the cocktail of drugs to kill her. And they had to hold her down because she didn't want to do it. And she had expressed at the time, while this was happening, she expressed that she was not ready to die. In her living will, and this woman suffered from dementia, in her living will, before I guess the disease took hold, she said that she wanted to kill herself, wanted to have them kill her when the time was right. And here she is expressing that the time isn't right, she's not ready, and the doctor has the family hold her down while they do it. I don't I don't understand why the family allowed this, much less participated in it. This happened a few years ago, and when I heard about it then, and I may have actually talked about it in my old show, the Liberty Cast, but maybe not. But either way, what is there a word to describe that situation other than demonic? Is there another way to describe it? It's not compassionate. You're killing somebody who clearly wants to live, but because she had dementia, the doctor's position was her words at the time couldn't be trusted, and they were going back on the will that she put together while she was allegedly still of sound mind. Where there is life, there is hope, and our hope must always be in Almighty God. Going back to the Netherlands, and they really seem to like killing people over there. And as I was preparing for this segment, most of the cases that I came across were of people in their 20s in the Netherlands opting to kill themselves. In the Netherlands also, it's not just people in their 20s, not just elderly dementia patients. Children as young as 12, between the ages of 12 and 16, are allowed to choose euthanasia or assisted suicide. Their parents have to sign off, so there's that. But here's the thing. It seems to be such a pervasive thing over there. There was a 17-year-old girl who, she's older than 16, obviously, so her parents didn't need to be involved in the process. But she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and was allowed to kill herself in October of 2023. None of the countries with these laws exclude people, except for Canada, like I said, exclude people from or stop people from participating in this madness when they have psychological issues. So a 17-year-old girl, because she's been diagnosed with this borderline personality disorder, is allowed to just opt out. And her parents were in the room when she did this. These people need help. They don't need a cocktail of drugs to end their life. These people need help. They need prayer and healing. And once the state kills them, once they kill themselves, that's it. There is no more chance for healing. There is no more chance for redemption. Again, this is absolutely demonic. And I know that I know that it has happened in the United States. There's been a number of famous cases. It's not legal yet, but when it happens over there, rest assured that there are efforts afoot, and I bet you there are efforts afoot right now to make it legal here. And we cannot let that happen. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. As I mentioned in the opening, Hunter Biden has been found guilty on all counts in his federal trial. I was surprised that verdict came down, and it came down so quickly. He was found guilty on all counts, and I fully expected jury nullification. I fully expected some home cooking in Delaware. But after the verdict came down and I looked at it a little more closely, the Bidens are not quite as popular as we may have been led to believe in Delaware. I mean, honestly, the case was a slam dunk. The case was a slam dunk for anyone not named Biden, and for anyone who was not related to the president. This case would have been a slam dunk. We wouldn't even heard about it. Hunter Biden was, and probably still is, a crack addict. And he was charged with lying on his 4473, saying that he was not addicted to any illegal substances. He was he was charged with lying to the FFL, where he bought the firearm, and he was charged with illegal possession of said firearm. Now, let's be clear. Prosecutions for lying on a 4473 are rare. They are very rare, and it's likely that this would not have happened at all if Hallie Biden, who happens to be Hunter Biden's brother's widow, that's a whole other story. If she hadn't thrown the gun away while she was high on crack, this probably would not have happened. This probably would not have happened. If you recall, whether you remember it happening at the time or from the trial, this incident, when it happened, caused the FBI and the Secret Service to respond to the scene. And because of that, the DOJ probably didn't have much of a choice but to pursue charges initially. But let's not forget about the sweetheart deal that they tried to push forward, that the judge just summarily rejected, said absolutely not, which is surprising, also coming from Delaware. But once Trump was convicted, they saw an opportunity because obviously everybody was saying that the trial was rigged, the trial was a sham, it should never have been brought in, and everything like that, all of which is true. But because of that furor, they saw an opportunity to say, see, justice is blind because the president's son was convicted. We we know that he's going to get pardoned. Whether he gets, I seriously doubt he's going to serve any time, frankly. And then even if he does, his sentence is going to get commuted. He's going to get pardoned. I know Biden has said that he is not going to pardon Hunter. That's a total lie. A total lie. Hunter Biden, if he serves any time, it will be minimal, and he will eventually be pardoned for this conviction. In some other news regarding the Second Amendment, the Supreme Court has struck down the ban on bump stocks. Now, just as an aside here, people claim that I and other people who support Trump are in a cult and that we just agree with everything he says because he says it. Nothing, absolutely nothing could be further from the truth. It, his position on bump stocks and red flag laws are a couple of the things that I vehemently disagreed with him on. Vehemently disagreed with him on. And there were a few other things, but those two with regard to the Second Amendment, which is what we're talking about here, those two were some of my biggest problems with him. But they're now legal again. And leftists like to say that bump stocks magically turn semi-automatic rifles into fully automatic weapons. That is absolutely false. This is complete nonsense. All right, so let's take a look at this article here. The justices ruled 6-3, obviously along ideological lines, that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the ATF, exceeded its authority when it decided that bump stocks are now classified as machine guns and therefore are outlawed by federal law. Bump stocks are just devices that allow a person to actuate the trigger more quickly. I don't think I think a competent shooter can do it without a bump stock, but it's a device, as it says right here, that when the shooter pulls the trigger, the recoil of the firearm causes the stock to move back and forth, thereby bumping the shooter's finger against the trigger at a higher rate of speed so that shots can be fired quicker. Like I said, I think that can be done without one of these devices. I don't own one. I've never shot one, but from all the demonstrations that I've seen and people that I know who have shot one, it's not really necessary. It's more of a novelty than anything else. But it still should be legal. And Justice Thomas wrote that the federal law defines machine guns as a firearm that can shoot automatically more than one shot without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger. And since we've already established that the trigger is operated by the recoil of the rifle when one of these devices is attached, that it's not a single function of the trigger. Justice Thomas noted that even with a bump stock, as with any semi-automatic firearm, the trigger must still be released and re-engaged to fire each additional shot. Of course, these people, these leftists who are hollering about the bump stock and claim that it's a machine gun, know nothing about firearms, know absolutely nothing about guns, how they work, why they're protected. Well, they do know why they're protected by the Second Amendment. And so I take that back. They know, because that's why they are doing everything they possibly can to undermine the Second Amendment and chip away at it. So they won't be happy until the Second Amendment is repealed or overregulated to the point where it's basically toothless, where it has no impact whatsoever. That's what they want. Now, I had finished my preparation for the show, so forgive me for this. But I had finished my preparation for the show when I came across this story. The prosecutor in Arkansas has declined to press charges against the agent who killed Brian Malinowski in a pre-dawn raid back in March. Prosecutor rules fatal shooting of Brian Malinowski in ATF raid was justified. Okay. Will Jones, the prosecuting attorney for the 6th Judicial District, has ruled that the use of deadly force during the ATF raid on Brian Malinowski's home in Little Rock was justified. What are the chances? What are the chances that this guy ends up as the U.S. attorney in Arkansas or somewhere? Anyway, let's take a look at the timeline of this raid, and then you tell me if you think this was justified. And we've talked about this before. ATF agents can be seen taping up the doorbell camera at 6:02:58. Little Rock PD, they use their lights and sirens to alert the family of the presence of law enforcement. At 6:02:59, a second later, they knock on the front door. At 6:03:27, they breach the door. At 6:03:43, Malinowski fires shots in defense of his wife and his home. 6:03:44, an ATF agent returns fire, and 3 days later, Brian Malinowski is dead. From 6:02:58 to 6:03:44, less than a minute and a half. When somebody wakes you up in the middle of the night, when you get woken up by a loud noise, how long does it take you to get situated, to orient yourself? I mean, seriously. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Less than a minute. From 6:02:58 to 6:03:44, less than a minute. In less than a minute, Brian Malinowski goes from sound asleep to fatally wounded. And they tell you that's justified. They go on to talk about the justification. I don't think there is one. I don't think there is one. Just an abomination as far as I'm concerned. Murder. That was straight out murder, and nobody's gonna pay for it. Not in this life, anyway. We just celebrated Father's Day, and so I thought it was fitting to talk about fatherhood, manhood, masculinity, all the things that are under attack in this country right now. And they're under attack because the country doesn't value men or manhood. So the question I've had is it because men have abandoned their role, or have men abandoned their role because they haven't been properly valued? Kind of a chicken and egg thing. I think it's the former. I think that by making it so that women could marry the government as opposed to marrying the fathers of their children, and because of that requiring the men to be out of the home in order for these women to receive the government assistance, they have basically rendered men irrelevant in the eyes of the government. And women have gotten that message loud and clear. Now, around the same time that that happened, we allowed the government to marginalize God in society. They took the Bible and prayer out of schools. They took fathers out of the home. And so since then, men have not had fathers, grandfathers, pastors, or any real strong masculine men to teach them how to be men, to teach them about the Lord and true biblical masculinity. And each subsequent generation since then has gotten more and more lost, more and more adrift, with no rudder steering them towards God, towards manhood. It is a father's responsibility to raise his children and lead his family. Ephesians 6:4 says, "And you, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord." You usually hear that quoted as fear and admonition, and the original Greek words, which mean, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce them, but the original Greek words mean discipline and instruction. And the first part of that verse, "Do not provoke your children to wrath," means don't be basically a tyrant. Don't be overbearing. Don't annoy them or agitate them with unreasonable or humiliating or abusive demands and requirements, because that will cause them to resent you. That will cause them to rebel. And you shouldn't show favoritism or indifference, for that matter, towards them either. And the phrase bring them up means, from the original Greek text, with bring them up tenderly, to raise them with tenderness and kindness. And that is a very important piece of the puzzle as far as I'm concerned. Now, regardless of whether or not prayer or reading the Bible is allowed in school, and you need to take your children out of these government indoctrination centers regardless. But fathers should be, even if you can't, whatever the case may be, fathers should be reading the Bible to their children, with their children, praying with them and praying over them, and over his family as a whole. Fathers should be teaching their daughters self-respect and teaching them what they should expect from a future boyfriend, husband, so that they know so that they have their expectations set on how they should be treated by the men in their lives once they leave their father's home. And they need to teach their sons what it means to be a godly man. And one of the most important things that they can teach their sons is that a man exhibits self-control over his body, over his appetites, and over his emotions. Galatians 5:22 and 23 say, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control." People can be annoying. Let's just be honest. People can be annoying. Kids can be annoying. But it is vitally important that boys, that children in general, but boys, see their fathers live by that fruit of the Spirit. When kids need to see their fathers dealing with people out in public, they need to see that fruit of the Spirit at work. They need to see that people will upset you, and it's okay to get upset, but there's a way to handle it. There's a way to handle it and get the point across that you're not happy about a certain situation without lashing out verbally or physically. Kids will upset you. People in general will upset you. Kids will upset you. Kids will push boundaries. Kids will test limits. and kids will require discipline. That discipline should be meted out with a measured, in a measured and calm manner. It should still get the point across that what they did, they shouldn't do, and when they do things like that, there are consequences. It's important that they see their fathers exhibit that self-control, and daughters need to see their fathers handle those types of situations so that they know what to expect from, but that they have an expectation set of their future boyfriends and husbands, and that they treat them the same way, and know that anything that falls short of that is completely unacceptable. All right, I'm running behind. I had a lot to get to today, so we're gonna get you out of here with some more adventures of the epically stupid, and we're gonna start off with we're gonna start off obviously with the president. Joe Biden and our government has given billions, billions of dollars to Ukraine. And just recently, while he was over in Europe, Biden signed a bilateral agreement guaranteeing $50 billion to Ukraine. Now, this time it is allegedly a loan backed by profits from the interest on $260 billion of seized Russian assets held in European banks. Why we have given them any money is ridiculous. I don't understand it. I don't care what they say about democracy and all that. We've been over that before. Why we've given them any money is ridiculous. But what makes this especially galling, what makes this agreement so ridiculous is that right before this happened, Ukraine released a hit list. They're calling it an enemies list, but it's a hit list. Why else would they publish it? And come to find out, after I saw this and dug a little more into it, Ukraine has published these lists several times before. And it's not the first time that Americans and American interests have been on this list. And this latest list, the latest list that was just published, has people like Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, Vivek Ramaswamy, and other conservative politicians like Rand Paul, Marjorie Taylor Greene, organizations like American Conservative and One America News Network. The list is quite long and extensive. Basically, anyone who's not a leftist is on this list. And if my profile was bigger, I'd probably be on it too. But it's that ridiculous that Americans are on this list and we're still giving them money. Why we continue to fund the government when they're declaring Americans enemies, when they're putting Americans' names on hit lists. And I don't care what they say, it is a hit list. You think if they go over there or anywhere near where Ukraine has any influence, that those people won't come back in a body bag? Come on. Why we're giving these people money is beyond me. I don't understand it. Now, I was going to talk about Brandon Johnson spending $32,000 on personal grooming, but I saw this over the weekend. Excuse me. I saw this over the weekend and I just had to talk about it because as morons go, this person has very little competition. And I'm not surprisingly talking about AOC, but it is the fellow squad member, Cori Bush. Did you know she was a nurse? I had no idea she was a nurse, and I never would have guessed it after seeing this clip.
The wealthy should pay their fair share.
Yes, wealthy should pay their fair share.
What is a fair share? What percentage?
So you're saying that you're saying that they're paying their fair share is what you're saying?
No, I'm asking what percentage is a fair share?
Their fair share, the same, if a third of my money is going to taxes, then I think a third of their money should be going to taxes. It does. Well, it does.
I'm trying to understand because you realize the effective tax rate on the poor is less than it is on the rich, right?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not the poor. I'm very close to that line, but I'm not the poor.
Okay, so the effective tax rate on the middle class is less than it is on the rich, correct? What fair share would you like to change the tax rate to on the wealthiest what percentage of Americans so it's a fair share?
So let's say the wealthy 1% could pay, let's say if they paid, let's just give them 45%.
Wow. I mean, you could almost smell the wood burning up there. I mean, and she's a nurse. I don't think I'd want her taking care of me if I was in the hospital, that's for sure. But that's not the reason. That's not the reason I bring her up. That's not the reason. I bring her up because apparently she wrote a book a couple of years ago called Forerunner, A Story of Pain and Perseverance in America, which sold a whopping 729 copies in its first week, not its first hour, its first week in release. Wow. So basically no one read this book. Now, there's no database to look up sales figures, and the New York Times bestseller list is basically a popularity contest. So there's no, you can't go to like Billboard like you can for music. There's no way to look up how many copies are sold, available to the public anyway. But just as, since we can't have that as a comparison, let's look at this. Jemele Hill's book, which came out the same month as Cori Bush's, has 368 reviews on Amazon. Again, not a bestseller. Big Mike's book, which came out about a month later, has 13,000 reviews or somewhere thereabouts. And Stephen A. Smith's book, which came out a few months after these, has about 1,200 reviews. Cori Bush's book has 58. So it's no wonder that this story that we're about to talk about didn't get a lot of play, didn't get any play, because I never heard about it until this. But apparently, and I think what's happening is because she's running for her seat again and she has a primary challenger now, I suspect her primary challenger dug up some Oppo research on her, and this is what they came up with. But apparently in this book, she talks about healing some homeless woman of tumors on her chest.
You're a pastor.
Yes.
You write about healing through faith. At one point, you came across a woman with, quote, several visible tumors on her torso. Tell me what happened.
So at that time, I, along with a group of friends, we would go out on the street and just meet with people and pray with people and offer them food. And this lady came to us and she had these tumors. I mean, she wanted us to like feel them. And I just remember I put my hand on her and my hand just began to move. And the lumps that were there were no longer there. And she was so happy and she like went on about her day. And I never saw her again.
So you think the tumors disappeared?
I do. If I can speak a prayer and I can believe what I believe and you believe that this will help you, then why not offer that to people? Because I know prayer has helped me.
I think that was the same interview where she talked about having an abortion. And I want to say she said she regretted it. I can't really recall at this point. But now that she's running again and has a primary challenger and she's getting trounced at this point, this story is now making the rounds. Now, as you all know, I am a man of faith, and I am living proof of the healing power of prayer. But I don't buy this for a second. I don't buy this for a second. And let me tell you why. The Bible says in Matthew 7:21, by their fruits you shall know them. And in that story, Jesus is telling his disciples to beware of false prophets. And false prophets will bear bad fruit. My parents and loved ones and people, other believers prayed for me, and I was healed. The fruit that those people bear in their lives is good fruit. You can see the fruit that those people bear is good fruit. Cori Bush, who claims to be the pastor of a church, and whether she had an abortion before is irrelevant because she can be forgiven for that. But she still advocates for the murder of innocent babies. She still is advocating for defunding the police. She still is peddling a lot of false narratives around Michael Brown and police violence and all this other stuff. She bears bad fruit. So whatever healing power she wants us to believe she has is not, I am certain that it is not the resurrection power of Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. I am confident in saying that without question. She is just based on what we know of her, what we see of her on a regular basis, she is every bit as demonic as the rest of her leftist cohorts in Congress. Anyway, folks, that is all the time we have. I ran a lot longer than I really wanted to. I will try to do better the next time. But please don't forget to like and subscribe and comment and share these videos, share the audio podcast so that we can continue to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and the message of hope and liberty that he has generously blessed us with so that we can preserve it and pass that down to future generations. And as always, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is always right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.